Welcome to my reading of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Chapter 1. Before I begin, let me tell you that this story is going to be told by a narrator who is one of the characters in the story, but he's a secondary character. So he will be telling the story from his point of view. He's from the Midwest and kind of nerdy, so I will see what I can do about a voice for him. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. "Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone," he told me, "just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had." He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person, and so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. And, after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's found on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is a unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift of hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and the short-winded elations of men. Okay, so I'll pause for 1 second. The bizarre way that he is speaking, he's from the Midwest, and he's talking like he thinks he's better than everybody, and that he's not going to judge people, and yet he does turn around and judge people. He even judges Gatsby, but for some reason he cuts Gatsby a break. I'm going to continue. Let's see. My family have been prominent, well-to-do people in this Midwestern city for 3 generations. The Carraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we're descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in '51, sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him, with special reference to the rather hard-boiled painting that hangs in my father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915. By the way, that's the snobbish way of saying that you came from Yale, and nobody else knows you're from Yale except for the real Yale people. I graduated from New Haven in 1915. Just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later, I participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War, which was World War I. They didn't realize that they were going to have to start numbering them. I enjoyed the counter raid so thoroughly that I came back restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe, so I decided to go east and learn the bond business. Everybody I knew was in the bond business, so I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, "Why, yes," with very grave, hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east permanently, I thought, in the spring of 22. Okay, so he went back to the Middle West, Ohio, or wherever he was from after the war, but it seemed boring to him, so he came out east. East is like New York and Long Island and New Jersey and Connecticut in 1922. Some of you guys might remember that 1922 was the roaring 20s when things were going great before the big stock market crash. After the First World War, but before the stock market crash. Let's see. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was a warm season, and I just left a country of wide lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man at the office suggested that we take a house together in a commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at $80 a month. But at the last minute, the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog, at least I had him for a few days until he ran away, and an old Dodge, which is a type of car, and a Finnish woman, which is a person who's from Finland, who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish wisdom to herself over the electric stove. Now, believe it or not, he went to the country alone. He went to Long Island, so he's going to work in New York City and live on Long Island, way back before there were lots of houses out there. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man more recently arrived than I stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. And I told him. And as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so, with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer.